Please don't pull it, the Apache girl begged. The rancher did, and his blood instantly ran cold. Tom Hawkins had been living on his ranch in the vast deserts of Arizona for over 20 years. The land was rough, dry, and lonely, but he loved the quiet and the freedom it gave him. He spent most of his days tending to the cattle, fixing fences, and checking on the water tanks. The desert had a way of teaching you patience, and Tom had learned it well. He had faced harsh summers, sudden storms, and even occasional wildlife encounters, but nothing had prepared him for the strange morning that started like any other. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft orange glow over the endless sand and scrub. Tom was walking toward the barn to check on the horses when he noticed movement near the haystacks. At first he thought it was a coyote or a rabbit, but then he saw it more clearly. There was a small figure, crouched low, trembling behind the hay. Tom slowed his steps, squinting against the sunlight. It was a young girl, no older than 12, with dark hair that fell in messy strands over her dirt-smudged face. Her eyes were wide with fear, darting around as if she had seen something terrifying. Tom froze for a moment. He wasn't sure whether to approach or stay back. The desert could be dangerous, and he knew better than to scare someone who might already be frightened. The girl's small voice finally reached him, shaky and soft. "Please, don't pull it," she whispered, barely audible over the wind that rustled through the dry grass. Tom frowned. He didn't understand what she meant, but there was a desperation in her voice that made him stop in his tracks. He raised his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. "Hey there, it's okay," he said gently. "I won't hurt you." "What's wrong?" The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she hugged herself tightly. It hurts," she said. "Don't pull it, please." Her English was halting, broken, but Tom could understand enough. Something had happened to her, something serious enough that she was begging him for mercy. Tom moved slowly, making sure not to startle her. He had seen injuries on the ranch before, cut hooves, scratched arms, snake bites, but there was something about this girl that made his stomach tighten. She wasn't just hurt, she was terrified. "Where does it hurt?" he asked softly. Her small hand shook as she lifted her arm slightly. Tom could see a dark stain on her sleeve, spreading like water through the fabric. His heart skipped a beat. This was more than a scrape or a bruise. Carefully, he stepped closer, keeping his voice calm. "All right, I'm going to help you," he said. "I promise I won't hurt you." The girl shook her head violently. "No, don't." "Don't pull it," she repeated, her voice almost a whisper now. Her dark eyes were fixed on him, full of fear, but also something else, determination. It was clear that whatever was hurting her, it wasn't just a normal injury. Tom glanced around, thinking he might need some supplies. "Stay here," he said. "I'll get some clean cloths and water. I just need to see what's going on." The girl didn't move. She seemed frozen in place, her gaze never leaving him. Tom noticed the way she held her arm, close to her body, almost protectively. It made him cautious. He had a feeling that this wasn't just a normal wound that could be cleaned and bandaged. By the time he returned with a first aid kit, the girl was trembling even more. He knelt down slowly, keeping his hands visible. "It's all right," he said. "I just want to help you." The girl's lips quivered as she tried to speak, but the words didn't come easily. Finally, she whispered, "Please, don't pull it." She held out her arm slightly, as if offering it to him, but still keeping it guarded. Tom took a deep breath and examined her arm carefully. There was a dark, unusual shape under her skin, something that looked like it shouldn't be there. It wasn't a splinter or a thorn, and it didn't look like any kind of cut he had ever seen. He frowned, scratching his head. "What happened?" he asked.
"How did this get there?" The girl shook her head. Tears streamed down her dirt-streaked cheeks.
She pressed her arm tightly against her chest, as if hiding the object from him. Tom realized she was scared of him, but not of what he might do. She was scared of something else. He sat back slightly, thinking carefully. He didn't want to make the situation worse.
"It's okay," he said softly.
I just need to see it to help you. I promise it won't hurt if we do this carefully. The girl looked at him, wide-eyed. There was a long moment of silence. The wind blew across the desert, carrying dust and the faint scent of sage. It was a quiet, tense moment, and Tom felt his heart pound in his chest. Finally, slowly, she extended her arm just a little more. He could see it now, a strange, dark shape embedded in her skin. Small, but clearly visible. Tom's blood ran cold for just a moment. He had no idea what it was, and that made him uneasy. He remembered all the injuries he had treated over the years, all the accidents, all the animals that had come to harm on his ranch. Nothing had ever looked like this. He had no idea what he was dealing with, and yet he couldn't leave her like this. "Okay," he said gently. "I think I can help you, but I need you to trust me." The girl's eyes flickered with fear, but she nodded slightly. Tom smiled, trying to calm her. "That's very brave of you," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to make it better." He reached for a pair of gloves and a clean cloth. The girl flinched but didn't pull away. He could see that she was terrified, but she also understood that he was trying to help. As he leaned closer, Tom's mind raced. What could this object be? How had it gotten there? And why was she so afraid that he would pull it out? He had no answers, but he knew he had to try. He took a deep breath and carefully examined the arm again. The shape was small but firm, lodged deep under the skin. He could feel the girl's heartbeat pounding against his hand as he touched her gently. "All right," he said softly. "I'm going to clean around it first. Just stay still." The girl nodded, holding her breath. Tom worked slowly, carefully wiping away the dirt and blood around the wound. He noticed that she was trembling all over. This wasn't just fear. It was pain and anxiety mixed together. As he worked, he tried to keep her mind off it. "Do you live around here?" he asked. "Are your parents nearby?" The girl shook her head. "No, alone," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but it sent a shiver down Tom's spine. She was a child, lost and hurt, and she had somehow found her way to his ranch in the middle of the desert. Tom's heart went out to her. He had raised kids of his own, and he couldn't imagine what it must have been like for her to be alone and injured. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll take care of you. You're safe here." The girl's eyes softened slightly. Though the fear didn't leave completely, she still clutched her arm protectively. Tom realized he needed to be gentle and patient, and he knew that rushing could make everything worse. He leaned back and looked at her, trying to smile reassuringly. "I'm Tom," he said. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Ayanna." "Ayanna," he repeated. "It's a beautiful name. I'm going to help you now, okay?" She nodded slowly, still trembling. Tom took another deep breath and prepared to handle the unknown object in her arm, not knowing what he would find, but determined to help. He didn't realize that this simple act of kindness would lead to a moment that would make his blood run cold and change the rest of his day forever. Tom gently looked at Ayanna's small arm. The strange shape under her skin was still there, almost like it didn't belong in the world he knew. He didn't know what it was, but he could feel it pressing under the skin, firm and unyielding. For a moment he thought of all the animals he had treated over the years, injured calves, trapped birds, and even snakes. Nothing had ever looked like this. "All right, Ayanna," he said softly, trying to sound calm and confident. "I need to see it closer. I just want to make sure you're okay." She flinched and pulled back slightly. "No, don't, please," she whispered, her voice shaking. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, but there was something more in them. It wasn't just fear, it was warning, as if she knew something he didn't. Tom paused. He had learned in life that rushing could make things worse.
I understand," he said gently. "I won't pull it yet."
"I just need to look. Can you let me do that?" Ayanna hesitated, but slowly extended her arm a little more. Tom could see the dark shape clearly now, lodged deep in the soft flesh near her elbow. It wasn't moving, but the way it pressed against the skin made him uneasy. It looked almost alive. He shook his head, trying to clear the thought. Surely it wasn't alive. He had to think logically. "All right," he said. "I need to clean around it first. That way, if we have to remove it, it won't get infected." Ayana watched him closely, her small body tense. She gripped her other arm tightly, almost as if she was trying to hold herself together. Tom carefully opened his first aid kit, pulling out sterile wipes, bandages, and gloves. He washed his hands, put on the gloves, and knelt next to her. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'm going to be very careful. Just stay still, okay?" She nodded slowly. Her eyes darted around the barn nervously, and Tom realized she was not just afraid of the object in her arm. She was afraid of the world outside, too. The desert could be a harsh place, and it was clear she had been on her own for some time. As he gently cleaned the area around the object, Tom tried to keep the conversation light. "Do you live near here?" he asked. "Are your parents around?" Ayana shook her head. "No, alone," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The words made Tom's chest tighten. She was a child, alone in the desert, and she had somehow survived long enough to reach his ranch. He couldn't imagine what she had gone through. He continued cleaning, being as gentle as possible.
"It's okay," he said.
"You're safe now. I'll help you." Ayana's eyes softened a little, but the fear didn't leave completely. She still hugged her arm, protecting it. Tom realized that whatever this object was, it wasn't just causing her pain. It was terrifying to her. He examined the shape more closely. It wasn't sharp like a thorn or jagged like broken metal. It had smooth edges and seemed almost organic. The longer he looked at it, the more uneasy he felt. He had no idea what it was, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. "Okay," he said. "I think I know how to help. But I need you to trust me, Ayana. Can you do that?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slightly. Tom smiled gently, hoping to reassure her.
"That's very brave of you."
"I promise I won't hurt you." He reached for a small pair of tweezers and a clean cloth. Ayana flinched again but didn't pull away.
Tom took a deep breath. He had no idea what would happen when he removed it, but he had to try.
As he worked, he noticed how tense her small body was. She was trembling from head to toe. Tom realized that the fear wasn't just from pain. She was afraid of what would happen if the object came out. He didn't know why, but he could feel the seriousness of the situation. "Take a deep breath for me," he said softly. "You're doing really well." She inhaled slowly and held his gaze for a moment. There was a flicker of trust there, just enough for Tom to proceed carefully. He gripped the object gently with the tweezers and applied slow, steady pressure. Ayana's eyes widened and she whispered, "Don't pull it." Tom hesitated. Something about her plea made him pause. He could sense the urgency and fear in her voice. He didn't know why she was so afraid, but he respected her instinct. Maybe rushing would make things worse. He pulled back slightly. "Okay," he said. "We're going to take this slowly. I won't do anything you're not ready for." Ayana's trembling slowed a little. She still clutched her arm, but there was a tiny hint of relief in her expression. Tom realized that the fear had been overwhelming for her, but the calm and patience he showed were helping her feel safer. He continued cleaning the area and adjusting the tweezers. Each movement was slow and careful. Tom had treated injuries before, but this felt different. This was a child who had survived alone in the desert. There was more at stake than just removing an object. There was trust, fear, and safety. As he worked, he noticed something unusual. The object was not just lodged in her skin. It seemed to have grown into it slightly, almost like it was a part of her. Tom frowned. He had seen infections and embedded debris before, but this didn't look like either. He realized that whatever this was, it wasn't a simple injury. He had to be careful, not just to avoid hurting her, but also to understand what he was dealing with. "Almost there," he said softly, trying to keep her calm. "Just a little more, okay?" Ayana nodded, though her small hands were shaking. Tom could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she was bracing herself. He continued, careful not to rush. Finally, the object moved slightly under the tweezers. Ayana gasped and pulled back, but Tom held the tweezers steady. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got it. Just a little more." She looked at him, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Tom gave her a gentle smile. "I promise. It will be okay."
I'm right here.
He gripped the object firmly but carefully and pulled. There was a small pop as it came free. Ayana cried out not from pain, but from relief. Tom held it up to see what it was, and froze. It wasn't a piece of wood, or metal, or anything he could recognize. It looked almost alive, like a tiny creature preserved in her skin, but perfectly still. His stomach churned, and he realized for the first time that this was something he had never seen in all his years on the ranch. Ayana's eyes widened as she saw him holding it. She whispered, almost afraid to speak, It was supposed to protect me." Tom didn't understand, but he knew enough to realize that whatever this was, it had a meaning she understood. She had carried it in her arm for a reason, and now that it was out, her fear and relief were intertwined. He gently set the object aside and looked at her. "All right," he said softly. "It's out. You're safe now." Ayana's trembling began to subside. She still held her arm protectively, but there was a tiny spark of trust in her eyes. Tom knew he had to be patient. She had been through something difficult, and he needed to help her feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tom smiled gently. "You don't need to thank me."
You were very brave. That's what matters.
For a few moments they sat in silence. The barn was quiet except for the soft wind blowing through the cracks in the wood. Tom could feel the weight of the moment. He didn't know what this object was, or why it had been in her arm, but he knew that something extraordinary had happened, and that he had just witnessed it. Tom sat back for a moment, still holding the small, strange object he had carefully removed from Ayana's arm. The barn was quiet, except for the occasional creak of wood and the soft wind drifting through the cracks. He studied it closely, turning it over in his hands. It was small, dark, and almost seemed alive, even though it wasn't moving. The texture was unlike anything he had ever seen, smooth in some places, slightly ridged in others, and oddly warm despite being outside in the cool morning air. Ayana watched him closely, her small body tense and trembling. Her wide, dark eyes never left the object. She hugged her arms to her chest as if holding herself together, and Tom could see the fear and relief mixed together on her face. She had trusted him enough to let him touch the object, but clearly it meant something to her beyond just being a foreign thing in her arm. Tom's mind raced. He had treated injuries and infections before, but this was different. He had no medical training for something like this. It wasn't a splinter, a thorn, or a piece of metal. It was something else entirely. And the way Ayana had reacted, so terrified of him even touching it, told him that it was important to her in a way he couldn't yet understand. "Can you tell me why it was in your arm?" Tom asked softly, trying to be gentle. "It's okay. You don't have to be afraid." Ayana hesitated, then whispered, It was supposed to keep me safe. "My family, they said it would protect me from the bad things in the desert." Her small hands trembled as she clutched herself. Tom could see that speaking about it was difficult, even painful, but she trusted him enough to say it. Tom nodded slowly.
"I see, so it wasn't supposed to hurt you, just protect you?" She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, but it hurt. I didn't know." It got stuck inside. Her voice was small, almost a whisper. She looked down, afraid to meet his gaze. Tom reached out gently. "It's okay, Ayana. You didn't do anything wrong."
"You were brave. You held on for a reason, and now it's out, and you're safe." For a moment, she just stared at him. The fear in her eyes was still there, but there was also a flicker of relief, a tiny spark that told Tom he was helping her heal, not just physically, but emotionally. He thought carefully about what to do next. He couldn't just leave her alone after this. Ayana was clearly a child who had been on her own in the desert for some time. He could tell from the dirt in her hair, the torn clothes, and the way she had instinctively hidden behind the hay. She needed more than just first aid. She needed care, food, and safety. "Come on," Tom said softly. "Let's get you cleaned up and dressed. I'll help you feel a little better." Ayana hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the barn door, then back at him. She looked like she wanted to run but knew she couldn't. Slowly she stood up, keeping her small arm hugged against her chest. Tom led her to a chair in the corner of the barn, still keeping a safe distance to make her feel comfortable. He carefully helped her remove the dirty sleeve of her shirt and set it aside. The skin on her arm was red and slightly swollen from the object, but there was no serious bleeding now. Tom cleaned it gently with water and sterile cloths, doing his best to soothe her without startling her. "You're doing really well," he said. "Almost done." Ayana nodded but didn't speak. She kept her eyes down, still trying to hold herself together. Tom could tell she had been through a lot in her short life. Something about her demeanor, her quiet strength and caution, made him realize that she had survived alone for longer than most children could. Once her arm was cleaned, Tom applied a simple bandage. He didn't know exactly what the object was, and he didn't want to do anything that could make her uncomfortable. He just wanted to make sure she was safe and comfortable. "There," he said finally. "All done." Ayana looked at him silently for a moment, then slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. For the first time there was trust there, even if just a little. She whispered, "Thank you." Tom smiled gently.
You don't need to thank me. You were very brave, Ayana.
"I just helped a little." She nodded and hugged herself again, still trembling slightly. Tom could see that she was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally. Removing the object had been more than just a physical experience for her. It had been terrifying and overwhelming. Tom sat quietly for a few minutes, giving her space. He wanted her to feel safe without feeling pressured. The barn was quiet except for the soft rustling of the wind. Finally, he spoke again. "Do you want something to eat? You must be hungry," he said gently. Ayana hesitated. I haven't eaten much," she admitted softly. Tom nodded. "All right, let's get you something to eat. You'll feel better." He walked over to a small pantry in the barn and pulled out some bread, cheese, and fruit. Ayana watched him quietly, still cautious, but slowly she took a piece of bread. Tom sat down across from her, keeping his movements calm and unthreatening. "Here," he said, handing her a slice of cheese. "Eat slowly. There's no rush." Ayana took it and nibbled carefully. Her eyes stayed on him the whole time. Tom could see that she was still processing what had happened, still trying to make sense of everything. He decided not to push her. Just let her eat and feel safe. As she ate, Tom thought about the object. What was it? Where had she gotten it? And why had it been embedded in her arm? He didn't know, but he could see that it was deeply connected to her culture and family. He had to respect that, even if he didn't fully understand it. After a few minutes, Ayana finished eating. She sat quietly looking at her hands. Tom realized that she needed to talk, but only if she wanted to. He didn't want to scare her or push her away. "Do you want to tell me more about it?" he asked softly. "Only if you want to." Ayana hesitated, then nodded slightly. It's from my family. They said it would keep me safe from the desert, from the dangerous animals and bad spirits." She looked down, clearly embarrassed to speak about it. Tom nodded slowly. He didn't understand everything she was saying, but he could see the importance. "I see," he said. "So it was meant to protect you, not hurt you." "Yes," she whispered. "But it went wrong. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do." Tom reached out gently and rested a hand near hers, not touching her but close enough to show support. "You did the right thing by coming here. You were brave, and now it's out, and you're safe. That's what matters." Ayana looked at him and gave a small, tired smile. For the first time, she seemed to relax a little. Tom realized that the fear and tension she had been carrying for so long were beginning to ease. He decided that he needed to learn more about her family and culture so he could help her properly. "Do you know where your family is?" he asked gently. Ayana shook her head. "No."
I was separated. I had to hide.
Her voice was small, almost broken, but Tom could hear the strength behind it.
She had survived on her own, in the desert, at such a young age. That was incredible. Tom felt a mix of admiration and concern. She was a child, but she had been through more than most adults. He knew he needed to help her not just physically, but also emotionally. She needed safety, care, and someone to trust. He stood up slowly and said, "All right. Let's get you cleaned up and into some dry clothes.
Then we can talk more." Ayana nodded silently.
Tom helped her gather her few belongings and led her to a small shed near the barn where he kept extra clothes. He gave her a clean shirt and pants, careful to be respectful and gentle. She changed quietly, still nervous, but she didn't protest. Once she was dressed, Tom brought her back to the barn and sat down beside her. "You're doing really well, Ayana. I know it's been hard, but you're safe now," he said softly. She looked at him and whispered, "Thank you for helping me." Tom smiled gently. "You're very welcome. I'm glad I could help." For a few moments they sat in silence, listening to the wind outside. Tom realized that this was just the beginning. There were still many questions about the object, about her family, and about why she had been alone in the desert. But for now she was safe, and that was the most important thing. After Ayana had eaten and changed into clean clothes, Tom could finally take a deep breath. The early morning sun had climbed higher, spilling light into the barn and warming the air. The strange object lay on a clean cloth nearby, still small and dark, almost mysterious. Tom couldn't stop looking at it. There was something about it that felt important, almost alive, even though he knew it wasn't moving. He sat back down across from Ayana and studied her for a moment. Her eyes were no longer filled with the same intense fear as before, but there was still a shadow of worry lingering in her gaze. She looked at him cautiously, as if trying to judge whether she could trust him fully. Tom wanted to reassure her, but he also knew he needed to understand the truth about this object, and for that, he needed her story. "All right, Ayana," he said gently. "I think it's time I understand what this really is. Can you tell me why it was in your arm? I want to know so I can help you properly." Ayana hesitated, biting her lip. The sunlight fell on her face, highlighting the dirt streaks and the small scratches she had collected over the days she had been on her own. She took a shaky breath and whispered, It's from my family. From my people. They said it would protect me." Tom leaned in, listening carefully. "Protect you? From what?" She looked down, hugging herself slightly. "The desert, it can be dangerous. There are animals, snakes, coyotes, scorpions, and bad spirits. My family said it would keep me safe from them." "It is a tradition." Tom nodded slowly, trying to piece it together. He had heard stories about Apache traditions before, but never about something like this. It wasn't a normal practice he had encountered. And yet, seeing the way she described it, he could feel the importance it held in her culture. This was not just an object. It was sacred to her family and people. She continued, her voice soft but steady. "It is called a spirit protector. My grandmother said that each child must carry one when they go into the desert alone. It keeps them safe until they return home." Her eyes filled with tears, and Tom could see the weight of responsibility she felt. It was only 12, yet she had carried this burden alone. Tom reached out gently, resting a hand near hers.
"That's amazing, Ayana. You were very brave to carry it all by yourself."
"But why did it get stuck?" Ayana shivered and looked at the object lying on the cloth. I think it was too strong for me. I didn't know how to control it. My arm, it hurt. I was scared. I thought it might kill me if it stayed in too long." Tom's stomach tightened. She had carried a sacred object in her arm, meant to protect her, but it had gone wrong. The thought made him shiver slightly. He had no idea how something could be embedded in the skin like that without causing severe harm. Yet here she was, alive and unharmed, except for the redness and swelling. He took a deep breath. "Okay," he said softly. "I think I understand. This object is very important, and it was meant to protect you. It didn't mean to hurt you. But now it's out, and you're safe." Ayanna nodded slowly. She looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly.
I am safe?" she asked quietly.
"Yes," Tom said firmly. "You are safe now. Nothing can hurt you here." For a few moments, they sat in silence. The wind outside blew softly, carrying the faint scent of sage from the desert. Tom could feel the tension in Ayanna's small body slowly easing. He was still nervous, but she was beginning to trust him. "Do you want me to tell you more about what happens next?" he asked. Ayanna looked up, her eyes wide. "Yes," she whispered. Tom nodded. "All right. I need to help you understand this object and why it was in your arm. Then we can make sure it stays safe. And you stay safe, too." Ayanna listened carefully as Tom spoke. He didn't know all the details about the Apache traditions, but he knew enough to be respectful. "From what you've told me," he said slowly, "this object is very important to your family and your people. It is meant to protect children when they are alone in the desert. But it seems like it went wrong for you, because you didn't know how to control it yet." Ayanna nodded, biting her lip. "Yes, I was afraid I didn't know what to do." Tom smiled gently. "You did the right thing by coming here. You trusted someone else to help, and now you're safe. That's the most important part." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face.
You are not afraid of it?" she asked softly.
Tom shook his head. "No, I don't understand it completely, but I respect it. And I respect you. You carried this object with courage, and you survived. That's what matters." Ayanna smiled slightly, a tiny spark of relief in her eyes. Tom could see that she was beginning to relax. The fear that had gripped her since she arrived at the ranch was slowly fading. He decided it was time to take another step. "Do you want to keep it?" he asked gently. "Or do you want me to hold on to it until we can find someone who understands it better?" Ayanna hesitated. She looked at the object lying on the cloth, then back at him. I want to keep it," she said quietly. "It is mine, and it protects me." Tom nodded slowly. "All right, but we have to make sure it doesn't hurt you again. I'll help you take care of it, and we'll figure out how to use it safely." She nodded, relief flooding her face. For the first time since Tom had found her, she seemed genuinely calm. Tom spent the next hour talking with Ayanna, asking her about her family, her life in the desert, and the traditions of her people. She spoke slowly but with pride, describing how her grandmother had taught her about the spirit protector and how her family believed it would keep her safe in dangerous situations. Tom listened carefully, learning not just about the object, but about Ayanna's strength and resilience. She had survived on her own, navigating the harsh desert terrain, avoiding dangerous animals, and protecting herself with the object in her arm. Her bravery and determination amazed him. Finally, Tom said, "You are truly brave, Ayanna. I have never met anyone like you." Ayanna smiled shyly. "Thank you," she whispered. Tom realized that the object had not just protected her physically, but had also been a source of strength. It had given her the courage to survive alone in the desert, and now it had also taught him a lesson about patience, trust, and understanding. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Tom decided it was time to take the next step. "We need to make sure your arm heals completely," he said. "Then we can figure out how to keep the spirit protector safe and make sure it continues to protect you."
Ayanna nodded, looking up at him with trust and hope. For the first time, she didn't seem afraid.
Tom smiled, feeling a sense of pride and responsibility. He had found Ayanna alone, scared and hurt in the desert, but now she was safe, and he had learned more about courage, tradition, and trust than he ever had before. He knew that the day was far from over, and that there were still questions to answer, but for now he was grateful that she was safe and that he could help her. The object on the cloth might have been strange and mysterious, but it was also a symbol of survival, courage, and hope. And Tom realized as he looked at Ayanna that sometimes the most extraordinary things in life are found in the strength and bravery of a child, even in the middle of the harshest desert. After hours in the barn, the tension that had hung over Tom and Ayanna finally began to lift. The morning had turned into afternoon, and the sun cast a warm golden light through the gaps in the wood. The desert outside was quiet, the wind whispering through the sagebrush and scrub, carrying the faint scent of earth and dryness. Tom could see that Ayanna's small frame had relaxed somewhat. Her hands no longer trembled as violently, and the shadows of fear in her dark eyes had softened. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. He could tell she was still cautious, still processing everything that had happened, but he also saw a spark of relief and trust forming. She had survived the removal of the object, the strange sensations it had caused, and the fear of the unknown, and now she was safe in a place where she could finally rest. "You're doing really well, Ayanna," Tom said gently. "I know this day has been difficult, but you've been so brave. You've handled something that most adults would have struggled with." Ayanna looked down at her bandaged arm and then back at him, her small lips pressed together. It still feels strange," she whispered. "I'm scared it might come back, or that it's not safe anymore." Tom shook his head slowly. "No, it's safe now. And even more than that, you've learned how strong you are. That strength is what keeps you safe, not just the object." Ayanna listened carefully, her eyes wide. She had never heard anyone speak like this before. Most of the time, adults had told her what to do, or scolded her for being in danger. But Tom's words were different. They were calm, honest, and full of understanding. Tom reached over and gently rested his hand on the table near hers, careful not to touch her too directly. "You were never alone, Ayanna. You had your courage and your spirit protector, and now you also have someone who can help you." For the first time, a small smile appeared on her face. It was shy and tentative, but it was there. Tom felt a wave of relief. He had been worried that the fear might stay with her, that she might shut down completely, but she was starting to trust him, and that trust was a bridge to healing.
"Can you tell me more about your family?" Tom asked.
"Maybe if I understand them, I can help you even more."
Ayanna hesitated. Her eyes grew distant as she thought.
They are far away," she whispered.
"I got separated. I had to hide."
"The desert, it is dangerous. I was alone for many days." Tom's chest tightened. She had survived the harsh desert, carrying the spirit protector in her arm, while avoiding wild animals and navigating rough terrain, all on her own. The courage it must have taken was unimaginable for someone her age. "You're incredibly brave, Ayanna," Tom said softly. "I can't imagine what you went through. But now you're safe, and we can figure out the next steps together." She looked at him, her eyes shining. Will you help me?" she asked. Tom nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I will. We'll make sure you heal, and we'll also make sure your spirit protector stays safe. And we'll find a way to connect with your family, too." Ayanna blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. Relief washed over her, a feeling she hadn't experienced for a long time. For the first time since the desert had separated her from her family, she felt hope. Tom stood and walked to the small shelf in the barn where he had placed the object. He picked it up carefully and held it out to her. "This belongs to you," he said softly, "but we need to be careful. We'll make sure it protects you safely from now on." Ayanna reached out her small hand and took it, holding it close. "Thank you," she whispered again. Her voice was steady this time, and Tom could feel the weight of her gratitude. He smiled gently. "You're welcome, Ayanna. You did all the hard work. You've been brave, smart, and careful. That's what made the difference." For the next few hours, Tom guided her through simple exercises to keep her arms safe and clean. He explained that sometimes even objects meant to help could cause harm if they were not handled carefully, and that patience was important. Ayanna listened intently, nodding with each word, absorbing every instruction. After tending to her arm and making sure she was comfortable, Tom decided it was time to talk about the next step. reuniting her with her family and community. "I think the best thing we can do now," he said gently, "is try to find your family. They must be worried about you, and I want you to see that they are proud of how brave you've been." Ayana's eyes widened. Do you really think they are looking for me?" she asked, hope and fear mingling in her voice.
I know they are,
Tom said firmly.
"Families never give up."
"And now that we know what happened and how to keep you safe, we can make sure you get back to them." She nodded slowly, a mixture of relief and nervousness washing over her. The thought of seeing her family again brought tears to her eyes, but this time they were tears of hope, not fear. Tom spent the rest of the afternoon planning the next steps. He knew he couldn't just take her anywhere without proper guidance, so he made calls to local community leaders who understood her culture and traditions. He explained everything, how he had found her, the spirit protector, and her journey through the desert. Everyone he spoke to was deeply concerned and appreciative of his care. By late afternoon, plans were made. Ayana would be reunited with trusted members of her community who could ensure her safe return to her family. Tom knew this was the best outcome. She had survived, she was safe, and now she would be in the hands of people who understood her traditions and would honor them. Before leaving the barn, Tom knelt down to speak to her one last time. "You've done an amazing job, Ayana. You've been brave, patient, and smart. Remember, courage isn't about never being scared. It's about keeping going even when you are scared. And today, you've shown more courage than most adults could ever dream of." Ayana looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice steady, "for helping me, for listening, for keeping me safe." Tom smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "You're very welcome. And remember, you're never alone. You have your family, your community, and the strength inside you. That's the most important protection of all." As the sun began to set over the desert, casting long shadows across the barn and the open land, Ayana stood beside him, clutching the spirit protector. Tom could see the fear that had haunted her since the desert first separated her from her family was now mostly gone. In its place was relief, trust, and a quiet strength. When the community members arrived to take her to safety, she hugged Tom briefly, her small arms around his waist. "I will never forget you," she whispered. Tom knelt down and hugged her gently. "And I will never forget you, Ayana. You've taught me a lot today. Thank you for trusting me." She stepped back, her eyes bright, and followed the members of her community. Tom watched her go, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and wonder. He had been part of something extraordinary, a story of courage, tradition, survival, and trust. As he walked back into the barn, the quiet of the desert wrapped around him. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with warm oranges and purples. Tom reflected on the day's events. He had met a child who had faced unimaginable challenges. He had learned about her culture and her bravery, and he had helped her take the first step back to safety. The spirit protector lay quietly on the cloth, a symbol of tradition, courage, and the deep bond between a child and her family. Tom realized that some lessons could only be learned through experience, through compassion, and through moments of courage that tested both the body and the spirit. And as the desert wind whispered through the barn, Tom knew one thing for certain. Bravery and trust, even in the smallest and most vulnerable among us, could change lives, not just for those who are brave, but for everyone around them. Ayana had survived the desert, faced the fear of the unknown, and trusted someone new. She was going home, stronger, wiser, and full of hope. And Tom, standing alone in the quiet barn, would never forget the young girl who had taught him so much about courage, tradition, and the power of trust.